Welcome to another episode of Artistry, where art meets industry. We are your hosts, Rachelle Etienne-Robinson and Stan Substantial Robinson. Peace. Welcome everyone to another episode of Artistry. I am your host, Rachelle Etienne-Robinson, accompanied by the Mr., the man, Substantial. Today we are so excited because we have a very special guest with us today. She is a dear friend, accomplished artist, overall creative, a fellow Pratt grad. Please welcome our dear friend, Kali Abdullah.
Peace.
Kali, welcome to the show, honey.
Thank you. I'm honored that you've invited me to this.
Oh, of course. We are so excited to talk with you and discuss with your creative journey. It's an honor for us because we have been witness, as a fellow Pratt alum. We remember when you guys came in, your whole class, honestly, were just phenomenal. And so we're just so happy to be able to have you on the show with us today.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Hey.
Slightly nervous, but I'm good.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. So, as we mentioned, and we asked of this of all of our guests, is their creative journey. And so one of the things I want to ask you is, if you can reflect back on coming up, when would you say was the first time you were first exposed to the arts?
Well, my parents have always been not professionally educators, but have been have been open and creative, have never been closed-minded on the arts. Our house had a bunch of artwork on it. It's so funny because our house had a lot of Barnett B. Honeywood's art in it, and a lot of people weren't introduced to that artwork until the Cosby Show.
Yep.
But I'd be looking at it and I was like, oh, we have that. I mean, it wasn't original, but
Right.
So, and it's weird because neither one of my parents are artists, but my brother and myself are visual artists. And they've always fostered that. They've always been supportive of that. And then photography specifically, which is what I eventually got into, I got from my grandfather. I used to spend the summers with my grandfather my grandparents in North Carolina. And my mom always liked to tell a story. So my grandfather is a budding photographer, not professional, but he used to always take pictures of the family. And if you go to his house now, it's just a bookshelf full of photo albums, right? Wow. And I, as a child, would always see things because, I'm a city girl from DC proper. And, I'm in the country and I'm like, oh my God, look at that bug. Look at that bird. Look at this, whatever. And so I go get my grandfather to get it, to come and take a picture of it, which will be a funny story when we move forward to what my career is, right?
Right.
I would always go get him and be like, come take a picture of this and shoot it this way and do this. And my grandfather eventually got frustrated and just bought me a camera. Because he was like, I ain't got time to be running out in the yard every 5 minutes. So that's how I got into photography on a personal scale. And then I also drew and painted, but I think photography was always my thing. And I honestly, to be quite, I wasn't quite sure that was the career I was going into. And when in high school, I went to an academic school at Banneker, and art was not a thing. I don't know how most people's schools are, but it's arts is a hobby. It's not a career. So it wasn't something that was truly supported. Most of the people who graduated from my school were going into medicine or lawyers or doctors or whatever like that. And they promoted that that's what you should go into. And it really wasn't until my senior year. I was going to be a biomedical engineer. And then I was like, let me just see what happens if I apply to this one. And I had a counselor, Miss Britton, who was like, you really should go to Corcoran and just check out the portfolio day, you know? And I was like, but I don't have any work. I didn't have anything. I just put like pictures I had taken of my family and around DC and put them in a book. And I went and I didn't know art schools. Full disclosure, I didn't know anything about it. I went to the Cork grant. It was portfolio day, and I literally just stood in the longest line. That's how I got. That's how I felt. I was like, oh, okay, Pratt. That's the longest line. I went and stood in that line, and they looked at, and I had no idea that Pratt was like one of the top art schools.
Yeah.
And I also think that we came in at a time where they were trying to diversify, but I welcome it. I accept it, and that's how I got fully into it. But the point of my story is, I wasn't sure I was going to get into the arts literally until I got accepted, because I was applying to everything. And when I was in elementary school, I was like, wow, whatever I do, I'm gonna do it in New York. That was the story. Like, I didn't know what I was gonna be, but I was like, I will eventually land in New York, and I'll have like a view of the city, and like, these are my big dreams. But I didn't know what my career was gonna be. So that's how I got into it. That's my origin story.
Wow, that's an incredible story, because when I think of as you said, representing DC, did you know of Duke Ellington at the time?
My brother went to Duke Ellington.
Gotcha.
But I'm the firstborn, and it wasn't something that I never like showed interest in going to an art school. Like, my parents would put me in like art programs, like in the summertime. We would do like theater stuff, and just trying to figure out where we would stick.
Yeah.
But I think I was always so like academic first, not by the force of my parents, but just because I thought that was what the way we were supposed to go. And I was always that friend or that girl who was like, Kali is so talented and creative, and she can make this and she can do that. And my parents supported everything. Like, I was like, I want to sew something. My mom put me in like a sewing class in elementary school, and I ended up sewing my graduation dress in elementary school with help. But that was like,
yeah,
it was like one of those, like, you remember Blossom? It was like, what, those dresses that were really popular in the 80s that it was like off the shoulder, that big flower right there with the matching hat. I was like, what's like that? But no, like, it's just a weird thing. It was like, we always knew I was creative. We always knew, and apparently my great aunt on my mom's side and my great grandmother, who I never met, had some form of creative talents. My great aunt, actually, she can draw and paint, but it wasn't something that was like passed down directly. It was just something we kind of figured out we could do.
Right. Wow.
I could color in the lines as a child, and it was like, oh, let's see what that does.
That's awesome. So we mentioned Pratt, and obviously how you got in. What was your experience like that first day in orientation? Like, did you feel overwhelmed? Did you feel you were in over your head?
Okay, so my class, full disclosure, first of all, like I said, I'm from DC proper. I was happy to be in Brooklyn. I was happy to be in New York, but that didn't reflect what Pratt looked like. And I grew up in DC in the 80s and 90s. And so before gentrification, it was called Chocolate City. Like, I was always around people of color. My high school was all Black. I think there was like maybe one white guy in my graduating class. Like, so it was more of a culture shock on that level, because I have to say, I mean, again, my parents are educators, and we know all the things, but I never had to live in an environment where I was around them on a regular basis. Them meaning other people outside of like Black.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest shock for me. But the plus to that was my class, again, like I said before, I think was the diversity class. And it was what, they would always say this was the largest class of people of color. So that kind of made me a little bit more comfortable. And then over time, I kind of was able to like, navigate a little bit better. So it was more of a shock of that. Being in New York, being in Brooklyn, whatever, that was nothing because, again, I'm from a city. So, like that wasn't a huge shock for me. Like, I think it'd have been more of a shock if I was in North Carolina or something, like in the boonies, because that's not the lifestyle I've ever been like raised on. So, but I don't know. I mean, I think it didn't take long for me once I got like that tribe, which included you guys. You were like a class ahead above us or whatever. And then I feel like the upperclassmen were really good to us. Mm-hmm. So, because it is something, it's a little, even though I was only 3-4 hours away from DC, it was the first time you're away from your family. Yeah. And again, you're with and it's not even just Pratt, like New York in general. It's just such a mix of people that I was just not expecting. Like, in DC, you got your Black people, you got your white people, there's Asian and Ethiopian. That's it. And and I'm gonna be honest, I was ignorant about it. That was about the scope of what I knew. Then I come to New York and I'm like, Brooklyn, and it's just a vast variety of people of all different cultures. So that was like weird. I was like, wow, that Black dude speaks Spanish really, really well. He must have really paid attention, not knowing he was Dominican.
Right.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember the question, but the shock that I had was more of a culture shock than like anything else.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, and you bring up a very good point because I think that was the case for a lot of people. I mean, Stan and I, we've talked about it, where it's like Black was just Black is just Black. And then you come and you find out there's Costa Rican and there's Dominican and Puerto Rican and Colombian.
And then all the Caribbeans.
And all of the Caribbeans.
And all the Caribbeans and all the Africans. Like,
right.
And my best friend, her family is from Ghana. So that was about it.
Yeah.
Like, I know Africa, but that was the only person I knew. And they were American. I mean, she was American born. Her mom is like from there. But, and it is interesting. And I think a lot of people, even though, I mean, and I guess today is different because, internet and there's way more information out there, but I feel like that was like the biggest shock for me. I was in a bubble, and that was the one reason why I wanted to move to New York. Even though it's only 3-4 hours away from where I was from, I feel like I'm able to navigate and be in any room better because of that. Because could you imagine if I had stayed in DC and then went to an all Black school and then all Black everything? Not to discredit that, at all. Right. Let me just clarify that because my mom went to Howard, so I was around that all my life. Right. But I just felt like moving here opened my mind and opened me up to way more things culturally. Right. Also, when you guys are from the DMV, we had the Smithsonian. Yeah. Let's just be clear. What's in the Smithsonian is very linear, and New York, I feel like, has a wider range of art from the major galleries to like those little small pocket galleries. So I think that's what also helps.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was I would say, like, as someone who was from an area not too far from you, because I was in PG, very similar experience. I also remember like when I finally started kind of venturing out a bit and leaving the campus a lot more and going to different communities in Brooklyn, the Bronx, all these different places. And, and people thinking that, like, assuming that I was from a particular island or that I spoke Spanish because they thought I was Dominican or something like that. And it was just, like, it was a lot to kind of process and adapt to when I first got there. But I definitely feel like it made us all better. You know what I mean? Like, made you.
And I think that also, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no worries.
That also enhances your skill set creatively, right? Mm-hmm. Because you if you come in only knowing like one aspect of diaspora, and then you learn all these other things, because that's the same thing. Like when I came to New York, it was like, oh, what are you? Like, what you mean? What
Right.
do I look like?
Right.
But it was,
Black. Right. Right.
But it was like, no, where your people from? And
Yeah.
there was a bit of an insecurity on that because the question came up quite often.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, DC. Then my mom is from New York. She's from the Bronx. My dad is from, he was raised in Charleston. But like, when you're a Black American, you don't really, unless you sit up and do a whole ancestry tree or whatever, you don't really know that information.
Right.
And at the time, that wasn't as popular as it is now.
Yeah.
Right.
For people to claim what they are. And I was just like, I kind of felt a little insecure about it because everybody knew exactly where their mama and their father and their grandparents and all that stuff from because of the cult, like they were not Black Americans. But I think that also like broadened my perspective even in the art industry because you start to learn what like we know Black African American stuff, but like culturally like the other islands and the other countries and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
For sure. How would you say like those experiences both growing up in DC and then the culture shock of New York and learning how to navigate that, how would you say that informs your style of art that you began to develop?
Well, I think I had more to, because again, I didn't say this, but I went to school for photography. That was my major. And of course we had to take those foundation classes at the beginning. But once we got past that, I think it made me hone in more on, because I feel like the other thing about when you major in photography, everyone's doing that like New York-esque style pictures, and you're getting the same typical photos that you normally get when you first moved to New York. I can't tell you how many critiques we were in where it was like a gritty street or like some person on the corner or something, and it was supposed to be so deep. I tell you one thing. If anything I learned, and this is probably also going to add to my origin story of how I got to where I am career-wise, I had the most to say in critique class because I call BS so much. I feel like also when you go to an art school, people just like riff off of things that just be like, what? That doesn't, like, art is subjective. We know that.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of times people just like pull stuff out the
Yeah.
And
love to make it deeper than it is.
Right.
Thank you. Way deeper than it is. I was like, it's not that serious. And I think I was trying to be that person because I was like, my art span is like kind of limited, and I'm trying to be on the next level, so I'm gonna do this, that, and the third. That lasted like 2 seconds, and I was like, nah. So my photography, and you guys know this, is I was more into portraiture. I was more into, I didn't take like the general New York landscape, or I see a person from 20 miles away and I take a picture of them doing something that probably I have no business like taking. Like, people are just taking very, very voyeuristic pictures of random people and then trying to give a definition of what it meant. Right. So I think I was just like, no, for me, and also learning more about people, I think a lot of people say stuff with their face, or you see a picture of someone and you want to know more about that person, or you try to figure that person out just from that picture, because if I'm not there, you have to come up with your own solution of what this photo means or what it's about, instead of my BS answer of what it means or whatever.
Right.
So I think that got me to hone in on the style of the type of photographer I wanted to be. I never remember the questions you asked me.
No, you answered it.
Oh, okay.
Just talking about how it informed your style. I mean, you definitely diving all into it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that what was a typical New York photography or New York art, whatever, kind of made me more specific of what I wanted to feature. And then I think the other thing that helped a lot with Pratt, and I don't know if this is something that happens at all art schools, but they encouraged us going to galleries. In fact, I mean, we had to do it a lot. Like, we had to go. Fortunately, Brooklyn Museum is down the street. We lived in Brooklyn Museum, right?
Right.
And the other great thing about Brooklyn Museum is their first Saturdays, which is what expanded our horizon culturally, because for people who are not in New York or Brooklyn, it's all Flatbush, and there's nothing but a variety of cultures and backgrounds. So you when you have those first Saturdays, it's essentially a party, but it's it's open for people to come and look at the art, and it's almost enticing. Like, come look at the art, and then we'll give you a party with a dope DJ. You know?
Right.
So that is like, I think New York is such an amazing place. Brooklyn is such an amazing place. But then on top of that, we used to have to go to those little art galleries, like in Chelsea, which to me were always my favorite because they changed a lot, and it was always something weird and different and cool. And then of course you had the Met, which we always had to go to, and then the Guggenheim or whatever. But I hated going all the way uptown. Unless there was an exhibit that I was specific about, I was like, that commute.
It was
no joke.
And then that walk.
That walk. Yeah. And you had to be on the G train, so it started bad to begin with.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
It was rough.
And it's so funny. We're actually very proud to be a recipient and hold one of a Kali original of a portrait that you did of us, and we still have that to this day.
Snatch it off the wall and hold it up. Got it framed in the room.
But upon graduating from Pratt, you have had a stellar career as far as your resume of places that you've had the opportunity to work, such as Essence, People Magazine, The Source Magazine. What would you say that you gained from those experiences?
I think we have to start with how I got to that point, though.
Okay.
Because if you pay attention to the story of everything I've told you, like, I went to school to be a photographer. I thought I was going to be the next Gordon Parks. I was just like, I'm going to shoot everything. And then I think around my senior year, I was like, I'm bossy. Well, I didn't just learn I was bossy. I think we all knew that. But it was like, I did an internship at Milk Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And Milk Studios, for anyone who's not in New York, it's like one of the bigger studios that celebrities or big publications would do their shoots at. And I was doing it, and I was there, and I worked all over because you're an intern, they put you everywhere, but I was mainly in the equipment room, and I learned the levels of what it would take for me to be the next Gordon Parks.
Right.
So, I would bring stuff to the studio. I realized over time, the photographer was never in the studio. I was like, it's like all these assistants running around asking for, like, sweating bullets, asking for certain equipment, setting everything up, doing the lighting, whatever. And this just goes to show the level of the photographer. The bigger the photographer,
the less work. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm peeping that, and I'm like, and then I started noticing there are levels of assistants. You got first assistant, second assistant, the key assistant, like the one who gets to be behind the camera and tell the photographer the lighting or whatever. And so I was just like, what is the photographer doing besides getting the credit? And then there was this other person in the room who was telling the photographer what to do. And I was very curious about that because I was just like, okay, in a setup such as this, the photographer is the highest, you would think, like, especially if they're like a big name photographer, like you got all these little minions running around setting everything up, and it's no shade to them.
Right.
But then, then the photographer is like, so what's the lighting? What's the key? What's that? And then all they do is press the button. I mean, vision-wise, I'm sure they had a lot to say, and it's all about the eye. The photographer has the eye. But there's a lot of setup that happens that has nothing to do with them. basically I learned that the person that was telling the photographer what to do was the photo editor or the art director or whatever. And I was more intrigued by that. So after that, I left Milk Studios. I was like, I don't want to do that no more. And that's when I went to the Source and did an internship there. And I worked because it's publishing. I was like, well, I worked in the photo department, and I learned that maybe it's the art director or the editor-in-chief or whatever who says, okay, we're shooting so-and-so. Somebody comes up with the concept if it's not the photo editor. And then the photo editor is the one who puts everything together. And I was like, I'm a planner. I'm a producer. I am the one who always puts the parties together, gets the people together. You guys know when I was at Pratt, I was in charge of the Black Student Union. So, I'm the one who does the gathering, whatever. And I'm also the one who told my grandfather, went and got my grandfather out the house and was like, hey, come take a picture of this and take it this way and do that. And so like all of those things started to gel together my senior year. And I was like, maybe I'm not the photographer, but it helps that I have a photography background, because there's nothing worse than someone who has no idea what it takes to do what you need to do to get the picture, telling you what to do. So, at least I have that skill set. I know I can drop all the photography lingo, like, as far as how the picture should be taken or changing the lighting or the focus or whatever. But I also have the vision direct, like of what the photo should look like and how it can happen. Because somebody can be quick to tell you, well, I can't do that. But if you have a photography background or you have, a creative background, you can be like, well, this is how you could do it. Let's try that, maybe. So that's kind of how I got into that. And then it just kind of evolved from there. So my internship senior year was at the Source magazine, which was quite interesting. I was literally like the girl in the corner, like I didn't know anything. And it's so funny, they did give me like one photo job where I had to go like out in the boonies and shoot some like new rapper or whatever. Don't ask me what his name is because I don't remember. But he was like one of those new people that was being written about, and I hated it. I was like, I'm not into this. I don't like all the work it takes. I'd rather be the person telling me to go do that. So that's how I got into it, and then it just kind of evolved from there. I think from the Source, I was interning, and then I was still a senior at Pratt. And then what happened? I don't think I think I was like probably gonna move back home because I didn't have a job after like the internship ended. Like 9/11 happened around that time. I was actually on my way to the Source when the buildings went down. I was en route, like I was physically in the city. And then I graduated. I didn't have any, like, they weren't trying to hire me. The Source wasn't trying to hire me full time. So I was like thinking, normally when you do an internship, they'll bring you on.
Yeah.
And that I was, New York ain't cheap. So I was like, yeah, this may not work. And I literally thought I was moving back home. Happened to go to a party. This is where that cultural thing happens.
Yep.
I happened to go to a party, and then, back in the day, you go to a party, then you go to the diner afterwards. And that's when all the business meetings happen. So I was at a diner, and I was talking to some random person who was sitting with us at the diner, and they were like, what do you do? I was like, well, I did this and kind of want to do this. And I was like, I would love to work at, this place or that place. And my friend was like, well, my best friend works at Essence. And I was ears perked up. I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, give me your information, your resume, and whatever. I immediately after that went home, put my stuff together. And mind you, when you go to diner, it's like 4:00 in the morning, right? And then I, sent it over to the guy who eventually sent it over to who is now my mentor, Adrian Wahi. And, that's how I was working under her as like an intern-esque thing, but it was paid a little bit. Wow. And then they were working on a new magazine, which is why they asked me to come, because they were working on Suede at the time. So I started working on a prototype for Suede magazine. And I did that for like a year or two and then moved on. The funny story about Essence is Essence was like my first real job right out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for like 2 years or so. And then I left and did other jobs. And then I came back to Essence like 3 or 4 years ago and worked there for like 3 years as an actual photo editor. The first time I was like, you know, an assistant, a junior person, and whatever. And then when I came back, I was on team. And this picture that you have here is actually my shoot that I actually produced the cover for. I didn't produce a lot of the covers. I hardly produced many of them. I did a lot of the digital covers, but this shoot in particular was a shoot that we were doing, and it ended up being so good that they made it a cover. Because I was like, how can you not put this on the cover? You know what I mean? It was a campaign. I was me and my friend who also was working there, who worked on this, was like, you got this and this. Like, how could you not put this beautiful thing on the cover? And it worked out and it lucked up. And that was technically my first Essence cover, even though I had been there for quite a while.
Right.
But yeah, so that's how I really got into publishing. And I moved around. I worked between the first Essence and the second Essence. I worked at Harris Publications, who house a bunch of niche magazines. Most people know them for Double XL, Ratch, King, Rise. It's quite a few. They came out with a lot of stuff. So I worked there for like 5 years, and I was the photo director for King and Scratch. It's a funny story because I went there to work for Scratch because I was more into the music. Scratch was a music magazine. It was before its time, but for anyone who's like a music head and really into like DJs, before DJs became like DJ Khaled,
Right.
that was like the Bible for them. And I love that because I was a liner note kid, so I love to know who wrote what, did what, whatever. So I worked there, and then the photo editor for King left, and they were like, well, Kylie, you can do both. And I was like, I don't know about that. But I ended up doing both for like 5 years, and then I worked on another magazine. So I was working on 2 to 3 magazines as a photo director.
Wow.
So that was a lot. It was a lot. And, I met some of my closest friends now, mentors and whatever there. They challenged the hell out of me. Like, it was a man's world, first of all. Like, it was mostly men, of course, at that publication. And so I had to put my big girl panties on and get like a real deep voice when I needed something done. And I think that kind of brought a little bit of respect, because I was young. I was in my early 20s, running to doing a photo for 2 magazines. And as a photo editor, they gave me a lot of creative space. So I was not only producing, but I was also helping with conceptualizing, which is not every photo editor gets to do. Most of the time it's the art director who does that, and then you come in and do whatever they ask you. But I had a lot of freedom with that. So that was cool. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I freelanced for a while. I worked at some other magazines that were not in my genre, like that Institutional Investor, which was like a culture shock for me a little bit because it was mainly about business and money and like people and things I knew nothing about. But I think it worked for me in my favor because, again, I'm into portraits and so I can bring, the magazine is kind of on a boring side. Let's just put it that way. But you don't see these kind of photos of like investor people like that. Like that picture changed the subject matter, and that could have been like a double XL cover, right?
Right.
So
these are the record execs.
Right.
Right. These are, and the thing about it, this also worked in my favor because these people make more than rappers. But rappers they flaunt a little bit more. These dudes will come in and be like, you got 5 minutes and I'm out. So it's like literally having to know how to move things around and move really fast and just have everything set up so these guys could come, because time is money for them.
Right.
So that was an interesting experience. It just went to show it doesn't matter who the subject matter is, you're gonna get the same energy, because rappers do that too.
Mm-hmm.
So and I think the other thing that's really cool is that, I got stories which I won't tell about all of the rappers and celebrities and actors and actresses I've worked with, but for anyone who was ever curious about that, I think you have to walk into those situations. I don't know, I'm not starstruck usually, but I feel like you got to walk in those situations and be like, they eat and sleep and poop just like you. You know what I mean? And once you get past that part, you just know you're in there to get your work done. So it's not like you're like, because they just want to do the same thing. They just want to come and get their work done. Most of the time, this is probably their 20th photo shoot. So they don't really have the energy that you're used to seeing them have, like on stage or whatever. And you just got to keep it all the way real. And again, for me, learning how to put my big girl panties on, even though I may be the only one on set, sometimes you got to be like, okay, this is fun, but we got time. Like, time is money. The studio, we got 2 minutes. Get the hair. We need someone on set. She needs to change, whatever. You have to, like, that was something that I had to, like, really be, even if I was a little insecure or intimidated by whoever the person is, because there's been a bunch of bigger name people that it's like once you meet them, you're just like, okay, because people are always like, well, who have you met? Or I'm like, why don't you ask me who you want me to have met, and then I'll tell you. Yeah. And you get a different story for every single one. That's a good picture. That was for Ebony. Oh yeah, I worked at Ebony freelance, and that was a crazy shoot because that shit was with Oprah. Wow. And so I think she was promoting, I don't know what movie that was, but it was him, Oprah, and another actress, and I had to produce the shoot from New York.
Oh, probably for Selma.
Yeah, and I had to produce the shoot, not in office. I produced everything from this apartment. And I wasn't on set. The shoot happened in Chicago. And that's another thing I think I'm very confident, like when I hire someone or when I produce something, I'm very meticulous about everything so that in cases like this, when I can't be there or I don't need to be there, I like to be places, but I don't have to be. And the one thing that I was really particular about, or I'm very strong about, is that I can do my job from anywhere, and I'm confident enough to be able to produce it without having to physically be on set. Right. If you hire the right photographer and the right team and get a PA on set, you don't have to physically be there. And I'm gonna be quite honest, when this shoot was happening, I think I went to a Broadway show. Like that's how confident I was. Like, and that's Oprah, that's Oprah. But I was like, okay, I think you got it. Call me if anything happens. And I think me and my best friend at the time, it was like, how the Broadway has those specials, like where the shows are cheap. I think we went to the Broadway show in midday or something.
That's a boss move right there, honey. Right. That's a boss move. That's on another level.
Listen.
I mean, if that's something I just did brag about it, but I feel like when you've gotten to a point and you're confident in what you can do, and I like to tell people, like, I like to be flued out, but I don't have to be. That I can do it from here or there or whatever. And I'm glad that we're in a place now, career-wise, that we can work from anywhere. Like, you don't have to be. I don't have to be in your face to make something happen.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there'll be more of that, and because of the pandemic, and because it's pretty much?
It's already been like that. Like, in my current position, I've produced shoots where it happened and I couldn't go because of COVID,
Right.
because of the pandemic. But the show don't stop. You still have to make it happen. And I have to prove for you to trust me to be able to do this and no one be there. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
You just have to be confident that, I'm confident, but I have to trust whoever I'm working with to be like, I've done this before. These are the fires that we'll probably have to put out. Don't worry about it. It's a normal thing. And we'll make it happen. And it's always more stressful when you have a bigger celebrity.
Right.
But I don't know. I've been doing this for like over 15 years. So at this point, it's not too much that makes me nervous. Like more the other side is nervous for me. And they'd be like, oh, well, this person has all of these things. And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you, if she's a diva, these are the things that are going to happen. You can't avoid it.
Right.
And we just have to be prepared for it. But yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good shoot.
Yeah. Snoop just seems like he's fairly fun in general.
He is exactly how he is perceived. He is super chill.
Mm-hmm.
Smoking does happen. But that's no secret. But he's like super chill.
Right.
But yeah.
That's what's up. I was gonna say, I think I started to realize, how much you had going on and how different things were from your interning days to when you started hiring other people to do things for you. I think you had reached out one time because you needed a photographer in Shanghai or something like that. And I think I had just got back from Shanghai, maybe a few, like it was recent. I think it was like 20. Well, not recent as in, I think I had recently left Shanghai with the homies, and you reached out and I recommended a guy. But that's when I was like, the fact that she's like, yeah, somebody over here to do this thing, and I'm just like, I think I actually
don't even remember that, but was it for antenna? Was it like, do you know what it was for? Was it a talent?
I know you were just you were looking for a photographer, and we had worked with a guy out there when we were doing something for Bentley, and so I had a photographer's contact and I passed it to you. But like I'm the type of person, if someone asks me if I know someone, I do the introduction and I don't do a whole lot of investigating. I let y'all work out the details,
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
But that's dope. I don't even remember that because I probably do that to a lot of people.
Yeah. But and it's funny when the way you were so nonchalant about it, and I was like, it felt like you did it a lot, and I was just like, it was just really one of those proud moments. I was like, man, because we all remember hanging out in the dorms, going to these origination meetings and stuff like that, and everything else that the Pratt experience was, and so like seeing where a lot of us have kind of where the journey has taken us is just super dope. So
No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
I know you talked briefly about different celebrities that you have worked with. Are there any standouts that which was a really good or positive experience that you just were like, what, that was so good, like that one's for the books? That one I will always remember.
Dang, I really wish I had one. I've worked with so many people. I mean, I could tell you the ones that stand out that weren't in my favor, but we're not gonna do that.
No.
Those are the ones that are embedded right here.
Right.
I was like, it's so funny. When I was interning, or when I was working at the Milk as an intern, this is before I figured out what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
This was like my big introduction to celebrities, because like I said, Milk was a huge studio. Yeah. A lot of big name celebrities would come through there, and I'm just standing around, and Patti LaBelle comes out the studio.
Wow.
Big deal.
Yeah.
But no big deal. Comes out the studio, and she was like, honey, where's the bathroom? And when a big name person comes, you have to take them to like the celebrity, like the major bathroom, whatever. Mm-hmm. sis was like not done up, no makeup, no hair, in a robe, and I don't even know that she had heels on or not. She's white robe, hair is not done, no makeup, whatever. And I was just like, first of all, this is Patty. This is Miss Patty.
Miss Patty, honey.
Miss Patty looked like she just walked out her house, you know, like she's walking through her house kind of situation. And that, I think, was the moment that I just took that whole celebrity facade, like, and put it in the trash. Because again, they're regular people just like us. They make way more money. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was like, it didn't mean any difference. And I think she was more chill and calm and more receptive to me because I wasn't like, oh my God, this is Patty LaBelle. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's the demeanor I learned to have with everyone. I feel like if you treat them like it's your auntie, I mean, not in a way that you're like disrespectful or familiar, too familiar, but you know, if you treat them like a regular person, sometimes people want you to know how famous they are, but then most of the time, because this is work for them just as much as it's work for you, so they want to just keep it going, and you will learn that people are so chill. Gosh, I don't know specific, like, I've met with so many people. I always like to tell, I mean, I don't know if he's problematic now, but you always like to tell a story of like T.I., right? I used to love T.I. because, you know, that was a period where he was like everywhere. He was like up here, like everybody. And I am not starstruck. I'm not really into like being like, oh my God, I love, except for Method Man. Like, if Method Man was ever in my presence, I might lose it a little bit. But yeah, so there was a period of time where I was shooting T.I. like all the time. Like all the time, because, you know, again, I was working on multiple publications at a time, so I could be shooting him for various things, and they're doing press like crazy. They do these press runs, so they're doing a lot. And there was a period where I was in his presence like at least 3 or 4 times in a month. You know what I mean? For so many different things. At the time, this is a long time ago, but you know what I appreciated about him, and I think people take notice to this, is when he came into the studio, he introduced himself to everyone in the studio like we ain't know who he was, right? He's the biggest person at the time. To the point, the guy in the corner who's sweeping, he went over and introduced himself like, hi, my name is Tim, whatever. And I just, to me, those are things that I pay attention to. You know what I mean? I think that's really nice. He was real chill about it. Like, he wasn't like brand new. And you have to think, if he's on a press tour or he's working, he sees a lot of people. So he doesn't have to retain or remember who you are.
Right.
Within a week, and I always tell a story because I was pissed at the time, my editor-in-chief made me go shoot him at his house because he couldn't leave his house. We know why he couldn't.
Right.
Okay. So we had to go shoot him at his house, and I was pissed because it was my birthday weekend. And I literally had gone to celebrate my birthday and literally got on a flight right after to go to this shoot. I think I had friends in my house. I was like, just mail me the keys, whatever. Went to the shoot because he couldn't leave his house. He was so nice. He was very hospitable. Like, you know, most people would gag. Oh my God, I'm in a celebrity's house, right? Then we leave the house. Like after that shoot, I come back to New York. He's at New York. And I was kind of like, what you doing in New York? Like, whatever. And so we had another shoot and he's there. Then I'm out and about and we had something else and it was a social gathering, whatever, and he rolls through. So I see this dude like 4 or 5 times. Every single time, I mean, he wouldn't remember me now because I haven't seen him, whatever. But every single time, he was very generous, very nice. He's like, "Oh, hey, whatever." Like, and I just think that those are the things that you remember because when people are like rude and mean, it just makes you not. It makes you not want to be with them, and it makes it like a horrible experience. And then you mentally don't like a person. Like there is an artist who was extremely nasty, and to this day, I won't listen to anything that she sings. And I will be clear. I'm not gonna say it here, but I will be clear. I'll be like, I don't like her. She's nasty, and it just changes your vibe. So I don't know, but
yeah,
I've been around too many people. I can't really. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. You answered it because it's memorable, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say T.I. is like the top person, but that's the person I can think of off the top of my head right now.
Right.
Lizzo was cute. I mean, since you had put that picture up, she was really nice.
Yeah.
She's basically how she is like perceived, and those are the things that you remember. Like if they're and then the other thing is. And I just say this for anyone who chooses to go into a world of entertainment or being around whatever. They have the right to turn off. You know what I mean? They're not on 24/7, and you have to respect that. Like you can't expect them to come. Not to say that they need to be nasty about it, but they can't come in. You don't think that they're going to be like singing and jumping and like twerking and all the things that you're used to seeing them do, and you have to respect that. They may not even want to talk to you first thing in the morning because they haven't had coffee or whatever, and you have to respect that. And I think those are the things that I've learned over time, and whoever I'm working with or whoever's underneath me, I'm just like, keep it level. Like, don't, even if that's your best favorite, like just go whatever that person needs, give it and go away. Don't wow out or whatever, because that's when people start getting weird to you.
Yeah. That's how I know you've been in New York for a while, because you said coffee. I was like, oh. I was like, she's a New Yorker.
I thought she was going to say that's how I know you've been in New York too long, because I ignore people. I ignore celebrities.
There's that too, right? There's that.
Because that too. Like, you see somebody, because, in Brooklyn, especially when we first got here, they were like big rappers and artists. Erykah Badu could be having like coffee down the street, or
all the
like Talib and Rose and like all those Brooklyn like who became big, and people were like, oh my God, I'm like,
I love it. You have worked for not only you've worked for as many media organizations, but you've also worked freelance as an independent contractor for a good majority of your career.
10 plus years, yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say are some of the benefits with being a freelancer, and what were some of the challenges for you?
Oh, well, the challenge is the pay. I mean, we all know that. Like, nobody wants to be the bill collector.
Right.
The benefits is the variety of people you get to work with.
Right.
And you work for yourself, so you can pick and choose job if you are afforded the opportunity to say yes and definitely to say no.
Right.
I think that also gives you a better range, because again, I've been pegged for a lot more urban related, or I hate to say urban, but that's what it falls under, like magazines for people of color and stuff like that. And it kind of puts you in a box sometimes. So I'm always open to like freelance and do something like the investment magazine or something like that. So I can get like a broad range. The thing that sucks about that when you do things like that is that people look at your book. Yeah, okay. You remember what is that movie? You remember Love Jones?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Of course.
When she went on that interview and he was like, can you make it look slicker? Because she had a portfolio full of people of color in her portfolio. Maybe that's her thing. No one ever says when a person who a non-person of color comes and they have a book full of like major white celebrities or non-black people and say, could you make it look urban? Like nobody ever says that. And I think that was the thing that I always hated about having a portfolio full of, actors and rappers and musicians and stuff of color. It's annoying, and that's a whole different conversation that we can get into.
Right.
I think we were in a more diverse place now, but that was a big deal coming up, But back to your question about freelance or not freelance. Freelance is great if it's consistent. Most of my freelance happened during the recession.
Yeah.
So there were times where I was busy, and then there was times when I was really, really slow. And there was times where I was like chasing people for money. So those are the pros and cons of it. And just always being on top of your stuff so that you can stay relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of being freelance or as an independent contractor is the freedom, right? I mean, if you're not solely dependent on the money, but having the freedom to come and go as you please, like you said, work with multiple, either individuals or organizations, but you also are a business owner. You have your own company, your own production company called The Drawing Board. Tell us about that.
So that came about when I was in my freelance world, and it was basically being able to produce. It was my freelance job. Like, it was basically what I do, but on a contractor level.
Right.
So, but I also expanded that. So I was also using it to do events because, again, I have that side of production on me. So I started doing like weddings for friends just to help them out. And then I would always get referred to someone else. I never pitched myself as an event planner purposely,
right.
but people would come to me and be like, "Oh, you did so-and-so's wedding. I thought it was cool. Can you help me with this or this event or whatever?" And I was like, "Okay, cool." So, I mean, those are side things. And then, I can't do it as much as I want to now because I am a full-time job person or whatever. But every now and then I'll like assist if somebody needs to get like a shoot done on the side. And sometimes I do it just for fun because, when you work in a specific company, you can only do those specific things. So you want to expand your portfolio and you're like, "Oh, I would love to do," like, I'll come up with an idea of like, "Oh, I would love to do a model wearing this, doing that, and her makeup is this way." And I'm not going to be able to do that maybe at my current employer. But if I have friends who are interested in it, you can do test shoots and stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of your current employer and, and positions that you can, like you have your business, but then you're still doing other work. So congrats for your new position with Spotify. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how that came about?
Yeah. So my last employer before Spotify was a publishing company. And I have been in publishing for over 10 years. Over 15 years maybe.
Yeah.
And we all know publishing it's out there, but it's like you need to be able to transfer and be able to do more than one thing. And I'd always wanted to get into it's funny, I necessarily wasn't looking to do technology per se. I thought I would go more into the film route and do production for like TV and stuff, like a Netflix or something like that. And this kind of fell on my lap, and I was like, you know what? It's time. It's a way to stay current and relevant and still be able to utilize my skill set. So at Spotify, I'm pretty much my title is senior art buyer, but I'm pretty much doing what I've always done, which is finding appropriate imagery and producing shoots for the playlist covers. So a lot of the images that are on the playlist covers are usually provided imagery, like album, like the artist-led covers are usually given to us by the artist. But there are sometimes we luck up and we get to shoot them to have like original imagery.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that is more interesting, not I should say more interesting, but something that I am more challenged by, and it goes back to our thing, Stan, with me asking you for a photographer in Shanghai, is Spotify is an international company, and they need sometimes playlists that reflect that region. And that can be hard with just regular stock imagery. So one of my key goals there is localization, like having localized imagery for that region. So if I needed something in Japan, it wouldn't make sense for me to put somebody on a cover that is clearly American. A lot of our images, though we don't pay attention to it because we're from America, are very westernized, and we push those westernized images on other regions that it doesn't reflect. So like, that's one of the bigger things that one of the many tasks that I'm responsible for, and it's a challenge because like that I have to like find photographers in like Singapore or part of Mexico or whatever, or and so it's a research, it's a learning aspect, but it's also a rewarding aspect because if I'm looking at something, I would want it to reflect what where I'm from, and if that's the basis of the playlist.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. It's a fairly new job. I'm still getting my fittings there, and it's cool. It's weird because it's one of those jobs that I got during the pandemic, so nobody really knows how to navigate anything that they haven't fully because I've been a freelancer. I'm used to working from anywhere.
Right.
But I'm kind of like, I'm ready to go back in the office. So, I mean, a lot of people aren't, but I'm like, I miss that commute and the interaction. I am zoomed out, you know, like I'm just like, we had that off conversation. I'm like, I'm tired of people looking at my apartment. I just, it's weird,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a cool job so far. I mean, I don't think I've had a chance to explore all that it can provide because we have been in the pandemic, but I think it allows myself to be able to travel at some point and like really get to learn more about different regions and maybe shoot some more singers and rappers and artists. So yeah.
Congratulations, sweetie. I think that's great. I wish we had so much more time because there's so much to ask you.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as like, still going into your career and the other things you do, like, accessories and creating. But before we close out, I do want to ask, as a multi-talented creative, as a photographer, you produce, you design, you build. If you could only choose one, what would it be?
If I could only choose one, I think the producing part is my favorite part. Like I do that. I find that that's my biggest skill set, and I produce beyond, as like just photo shoots or whatever. I produce in like my basic life. Like, don't let me be out with somebody and I'll be like, well, everybody's like, let's take a selfie. I'm like, stand over there. The light is coming this way.
Yes.
Make sure you get me from here up.
Yeah.
So it's weird because I can't turn it off. I try to, but I can't. And even when I'm not, like, even I was on a stoop the other day with my friends and these guys wanted some pictures taken. And my friend called me all the way across. Yo, Khalid, come take this picture. It's 20 people on the stoop. Someone literally next to him, but I have to go and take it. So it's like, or even if I'm like, even if it's not a shoot related, even if it's like a regular day situation, I come off sounding like really bossy, and I'll take that. But it's just the direction for me.
Yeah.
I feel like I produce in my sleep. Like,
I mean, clearly, since you were a baby, since you were a little one, right?
I mean, listen, you guys knew me in college. I was like, what's this program about? It don't work for me. I'm gonna be the president.
Yes.
I'm gonna be in charge. And on top of that, I was that, and I worked at the student union. So I was, I don't know if y'all remember, I did like the events on campus too.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably my thing. I'll probably do that forever, even if it's not like a regular 9-to-5. I think I do that very well. It's exhausting too, especially when people don't listen. But it's a thing. I think that's my skill set.
Oh, honey. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey with us. It was great catching up because we haven't seen, granted, since before the pandemic, but it's been a minute. But thank you so much for taking your time with us and sharing with us.
I'm humbled that you even asked.
Oh, of course. Of course. Of course. And for those of you that are watching, thank you for joining us today. Please follow Kylie. Her information will be provided in the description. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, if you like what you heard today, we have so much more in store. So please be sure to like and subscribe and share. And that's a wrap, Mr. Robinson.
Yeah. So, and just one last thing to shout out to those of you who are listening to the podcast who aren't necessarily watching, just giving y'all heads up. If you actually want to come to YouTube, you can check us out, Substantial Art and Music, or just search Artistry. So you can come and watch this interview and also see some of her amazing artwork. All right. But everyone take care. You be blessed. And sis, we'll chop it up with you in a few. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to Artistry, where art meets industry. This podcast has been brought to you by Substantial Art and Music. For more information, please visit www.subartandmusic.com. You can also follow us on social media at subartandmusic. We'll see you soon. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.